The courtroom was packed, journalists scribbling, cameras clicking, and tension so thick you could feel it in your bones. All eyes were on the two women seated at the front, former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, known for her sharp mind and unwavering courage, and Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, respected, revered, but now the subject of unsettling whispers. Pam stood slowly, her expression unreadable, and held up a simple manila folder. No theatrics, no showmanship, just quiet confidence in a trembling truth. Your Honor, she said, voice clear and firm, I request to submit into evidence a document that I believe this court, and the American people, have a right to see. A hush fell over the room. Even Judge Barrett's hands, usually calm and precise, clenched the edge of her desk. This wasn't just another legal hearing. It was the culmination of a quiet investigation Pam had carried out after receiving an anonymous tip, a single envelope delivered in the dead of night with just 6 words scribbled on it, "She's not who you think." Inside the folder was proof, clear, irrefutable, of a backdoor agreement made years ago. A land deal involving a powerful pharmaceutical lobbyist, shielded by layers of legal jargon and ethical gray zones. It wasn't illegal, but it was unethical, and it betrayed the public's trust. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. One could hear a pin drop, or the weight of disillusionment crashing into the hearts of those who had once believed in something untouchable. Judge Barrett's gaze met Pam's. No words passed between them, but something deeper did, a flicker of shame, and maybe, just maybe, relief. But then something unexpected happened. Pam didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand resignation or headlines. Instead, she said softly, "We all fall short. Even our heroes. But what matters is whether we choose to make it right." That moment cracked something open in the room, a shift. This wasn't about vengeance or reputation. It was about integrity. Then Pam turned toward the judge again. "You've done so much good for this country, and I know that deep down, you're still the woman who believes in justice. So here's what I'm asking, not for punishment, but for repentance. Publicly, transparently, led by example, show the world that truth matters more than pride." The room held its breath. To everyone's astonishment, Judge Barrett nodded. Not out of defeat, but out of dignity. "I will," she whispered, her voice faltering, the mask of perfection giving way to something far more powerful, honesty. In the days that followed, the judge made a public statement, acknowledging the deal, taking full responsibility, and stepping away from several cases involving corporate interests. The media, for once, didn't spin it as scandal, but as redemption. And Pam, she walked away quietly, refusing interviews, saying only, "Sometimes the loudest victories are the ones whispered in truth." That moment sparked something across the country, conversations about ethics, leadership, and courage. Students studied it in classrooms. Lawyers debated it in courtrooms. And ordinary citizens felt just a little more empowered to speak up when something felt wrong. Because one woman had the courage to expose the truth, not to destroy, but to rebuild. Final message. True justice isn't about tearing others down. It's about lifting truth up, even when it shakes the ground beneath us. Weeks after the courtroom reckoning, a ripple effect began to unfold, far beyond Washington, D.C. Pam Bondi returned to Florida, not as a politician, but as something rarer in today's world, a quiet reformer. She began visiting law schools, meeting with young attorneys, and starting dialogues about ethical integrity in positions of power. Truth isn't always glamorous, she told a packed room at the University of Miami. But it's always worth it. Meanwhile, Judge Barrett kept her promise. She initiated a full disclosure of prior associations, recused herself from questionable cases, and began working behind the scenes on a judicial reform task force. Critics expected her to retreat in shame. But instead, she stepped forward with humility, becoming, ironically, more respected for her vulnerability than she had ever been for her power. One of the most unexpected outcomes came from a 22-year-old law student in Boston named Mariah, who had been struggling with the idea of giving up on law school altogether. She'd watched the courtroom video of Pam's quiet takedown a dozen times. "It wasn't the drama that moved me," she told a podcast later. "It was the compassion, the way she gave Judge Barrett a way forward instead of a way out. That's what made me stay. I want to be that kind of lawyer." Across social media, a new trend emerged, #JusticeWithGrace. It wasn't just a hashtag, it became a movement. Teachers used it in classrooms. Churches mentioned it in sermons. Even a few political leaders, across both parties, referenced it in speeches. But the moment that touched Pam the most was a handwritten letter. No name, no return address, just a few words. Greater than, you gave me the courage to admit my mistake. My family forgave me. Thank you for showing me that truth and kindness can coexist. Pam read it 3 times before placing it in a small wooden box on her nightstand, next to her father's old Bible. That letter, to her, meant more than any headline ever could. Because in a world that often demands outrage, Pam Bondi had chosen grace. Epilogue. Months later, Judge Barrett returned to the bench, older, wiser, and more human. Her rulings began to reflect not just the letter of the law, but the spirit behind it. She cited transparency and accountability more often. And every now and then, she'd glance toward the back of the courtroom, half expecting to see Pam sitting quietly, arms crossed, eyes sharp. And though Pam never returned, the echo of her truth lived on. Final closing message. It takes courage to speak the truth. But it takes even more to do so with kindness. In a world desperate for accountability, compassion may just be the greatest form of justice.